going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Last week I put up a post on the community section of YouTube basically saying how I'm going to be doing a Q&A and I'm going to be recording videos for it instead. And because typically the live Q&As don't do well because only a few people chime in at a time, and so a lot of the questions get asked after the fact. So I gave you guys a week to basically ask some questions, and I'm going to make a video answering them. I'm going to do that once a week. So for now, Chris is over here and he's going to be reading me some of these questions, and I'm going to be answering them for you. So let's get to it.
Alright, first guy here is Plastic Horse GSXR 1K.
Dunkin' Donuts marketing.
There you go. Can you explain the difference between just taking a stock ECU and flashing it to unrestricted versus doing a custom map? It's got a couple other parts to that, but I think you can probably start with that.
Alright, essentially, maybe he's referring to the super generic flashes. A lot of tuners out there that just unrestrict the ECU and then they'll rely on people getting power commanders and stuff to custom tune them. But typically what I do is, and a lot of tuners do this as well, but when they get the bike, they not only just unrestrict them, but they write their own throttle maps. They turn off all the ECU codes and all that stuff. Those other guys do that stuff too. They write their own custom fuel map for that particular exhaust system. I've found personally, when it comes to male tuning bikes, that the real only question is, alright, do you have a full system on the bike, do you have a slip-on on the bike, or do you have a stock exhaust on the bike? For the most part, whichever one you has the dominant effect on the fuel map. So if you got a full system, I'll have a fuel map for that. A slip-on only, I'll have a fuel map for that. Stock exhaust, I'll have a fuel map for that. They all vary a little bit, and not a lot of people understand that. You could have a perfectly tuned bike and then have the exact same parts on another one of those bikes and put that map in it, and it won't be perfect. You have to constantly address small fueling changes on different bikes, because what a lot of things happen that people don't take into consideration is no two fuel injectors really ever flow the same. There's a reason why people pay to send their fuel injectors out to get flow matched. No two fuel pumps flow the same. They're all close, but bottom line is a little bit of difference here and there makes a completely different fuel map. So that's where custom tuning a bike in person kind of pays off versus just a male flash. I probably answered more than I needed to on that, so back to you.
You touched on some of it. I think the next part of his question is a power commander versus a full, ECU flash. What's better?
An ECU flash that's perfectly dialed in will always be superior to a piggyback system, because power commanders, Bazzaz, they're all making corrections off of a pre-existing fuel map. So they're always delayed, it's always behind. They're chasing and they're writing their own changes. ECU flash, perfectly dialed in any day over a power commander.
LXR tire. Yeah. What's the next step for the bitch Ninja? 2019 ZX10R engine. Obviously, you're a big fan of that. You're gonna do like a power adder, like a turbo, nitrous, all of them.
All right, getting more in depth with that. I get that a lot, and I find a lot of people ask me, they feel like I'm not doing the power adder stuff because I can't, or I can't afford it, and it's typically not that so much as what I personally enjoy isn't necessarily the fastest of the fast type of bike. I like a very reliable, fast, efficient, naturally aspirated bike. Specifically more towards my bike, I'm a fan of leaving it the way it is. I would rather have a second bike that I didn't care about to really kind of dig into it. I did, however, purchase an intake Cowie kit cam for the bike. It gives me an excuse to check lash because the motor's been together, or excuse me, the motor has 10,000 miles on it. So I mean, I don't know, so it's not running like it needs a valve adjustment, but while I'm in there, it's stupid not to check. So it gives me an excuse to do that, and I figure the kit cam will probably give me 3 or so more horsepower, and it might rev out a little better after 14,000, which is ultimately kind of where I would want the power on this bike. Yeah, I'm thinking just maybe a kit cam and then some C85. Honestly, I'll just play with some fuel tuning on it, but other than that, I like what the bike is. I'd rather get a second bike and build something different. I still want to build a turbo Busa. I want to have something that's just dumb fast, just to say I have it. My fun bike will be the ZX10. Right. Next question.
Next person is Tori Spencer. What is next for the bitch Ninja to get any faster besides you losing 30 pounds?
I think I just kind of answered that question.
I think you did.
So that answers that question.
There you go. Zikri Hafiz. The 2015 to 2018 S1000RR, can it be faster or as fast as the Gen 5 ZX10R?
Yes.
Properly set up?
Yes, 100%. Case in point is Eric's BMW, which is coming in for round 2 soon. We'll probably get some more races in. Somewhere along the lines, people started thinking BMWs couldn't compete with Gen 5s because Gen 5s started kind of bullying BMWs at one point. I blame the people, really, that's all it comes down to, because if you gave me a BMW S1000, 15 and newer, 10 to 14s those do make legitimately less power than a Gen 5, and the 15 Plus. So if I had a Gen 5 ZX10 and a 15 Plus BMW, and I modded them exactly the same, that's a rider's race. It's really all it comes down to. No matter what brand loyalists on either side wants to say, the bikes are very equal bikes. I do think the BMW has the advantage in the short race because of their first gear is a much snappier first gear. But if you're starting off at like 60 miles an hour, that first gear kind of goes out the window. Where that first gear shines is like from 30 to 40 miles an hour or so, or a dig, that works too. But
yeah, so this is a multi-part question. So part 2 is why do you see more Gixxer 1000s than the ZX10Rs in Pro Street and the Real Street categories?
I'm actually glad this came up.
And like, what are the characteristics of the Gixxer that people, rather go to that side together?
Outside of people preferring brands for drag racing, there is one major thing that separates the Suzuki from the Kawis and makes the Suzuki superior. Bigger diameter clutch. That's really all it comes down to. They have more clutch, and in drag racing, that's really all drag racers care about is the clutch. Sure, in the big aftermarket with Pro Street, you go slider and all that stuff, and shit sort of becomes automated. But in the more basic form of drag racing, the Suzuki is a superior drag bike because of how much bigger the clutch is. Other than that, that's really it.
Yes.
There'll be other brand loyalist reasons to say, oh, well, this motor is the blah, 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 and this blah. At the end of the day, the clutch. The clutch is the main reason why Suzukis are one of the baddest drag bikes, period.
Yes, I see a lot of comments with this too, but the third part is how do you brake with one rotor and not using ABS?
Might be hard to understand, but basically, after I'm done making a pull, I roll off throttle, I sit up, I grab the brake, and I slow down. That's really it. That's how I do it, I'd say.
That's some voodoo.
It's voodoo, yeah. I think it's kind of some magic to it. Don't knock it till you try it. The brake pads are hands down the worst part of the braking system. You have one rotor and a good set of pads, you'd be amazed how well these things stop. Carry on, Chris.
The next guy we have is Michael Alexiou. What was the estimated cost of the build for the Bitch Ninja?
The Bitch Ninja is a max effort stock motor build. So what that means is that people assume that I'm trying to say I don't have money into the bike, and that's not at all the case. In fact, I probably have more money into this bike than a lot of guys with motor work do. When you start chasing the very small niche things that have very little effect, offhand, I'd say front to back on this bike, let's not include the paint and plastics that I recently changed up. Let's say that's all stock, but we'll include like the dash and everything else. I'd say it's an easy 14 to 15,000 I have in this bike, no problem.
Plus all the R&D,
and you have to understand too, there's not a dime of labor paid. That's part prices.
So this is the bike for the channel, right? So you got to think of R&D, research and development for the customer.
Absolutely.
And all that. So
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't take that into account. You're not even putting that in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we took into account every dime I've put into this bike and then either sold parts or whatever, then I've got well over 20, probably 25 or so between parts that I put on it and sold. I've had 4 or 5 exhaust systems, so I mean, when I say I prefer an exhaust system, there's a reason for it. The SC stuff and the grave header, that works great. It's just way too loud and I'm all set. The older I get, the quieter if my stuff could be blindingly fast and whisper quiet, that's how I want it.
Alright, so we got Shadow V. Would you ever buy a bike for cornering performance instead of making it go as fast as possible in a straight line?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would 100% do that, except I will admit my flaws, and I am not gonna pretend to be a suspension expert when it comes to road racing. But I would happily learn if the right guy came around for that. But usually the road racers are spending too much time hating on the fact that we're doing straight line stuff. So, that is what that is.
Joshua Davis. Since you guys are at the max effort tuning wise, do you ever have issues with different climates? Let's say you went to Florida, Georgia, and obviously you can talk about going to Texas,
yep.
All that stuff. And would you have to tweak the tune?
Yes, every single place you go. I tweak the tune almost every time we race up here. So when you travel, I mean, if you don't have by means of doing it, it's not make or break. But I mean, there's a good chance that if you lost a race by a half a bike, having adjusted the air fuel in that climate would have made up for that. You know, it depends. If you're traveling, I think it's worth it to be able to have that ability to retune your bike for that climate. Because typically if you're traveling, you don't want to make a fool of yourself going places and spending all that money, so you want to be on your A game.
Evan Sprague, is Matthew Kennedy as fast as he says he is?
Matthew Kennedy as fast as he says he is. He's a scrub. No, he's fast. He definitely knows what he's doing. I'd say he's a better rider than me. He's definitely a lighter rider than me. Not light enough to have beaten me in a race though, but no, he's fast. If we swap bikes, he'd be an animal on my bike personally. No, we're buddies, so I give him credit. Last time we ran, I was the faster of the two, and I think he'll attest to that. Darren
Hargrave, do you know what would cause the top fuel injectors not to spray?
Spilling coffee.
Good save, good save. Yeah, so do you know what would cause the top fuel injectors not to spray?
Is there a bike involved with that?
No information.
No bike. Maybe check and see if they're plugged in. I don't know. I can only do so much with so much information. So make sure they're plugged in. That's the best I can give you there.
B5454. This has been asked a lot actually. All your comments. What happened to the white H2 you were working on?
All right. I'm glad this question came up because I get this a lot, and I would rather answer it in a video like this than, you know, explain the one-off comments and videos what happened to it. But long story short, the bike came back a second time to me from the engine builder, and it was still leaking from the same spot on the cylinder head. I got the bike back within a week of sending it down there. So long story short, they didn't fix the problem. The bike went down again. This time I said to the owner, listen, you're gonna have them tune it the first time out because I don't want to be responsible when that thing comes apart, having been the first person to put real cylinder pressure to it. The thing hadn't been left idle. So I mean, it was leaking coolant at idle. What's it gonna do with 20 pounds of boost into it? They had the bike for another 2 months at that point. I guess they rebuilt the motor is my guess. Supposedly there was a dent near one of the water jackets on either the cylinder head or the block. They rebuilt the motor, they tuned it with a power commander, and I guess it made 281 or 282 on pump gas, which is, in my opinion, for how aggressive that motor build was, that's pretty low. Even on pump gas, not that I would have been spending much time on pump gas, I would have preferred an alternative fuel. The owner told me, or I told the owner when he was going to get this bike, I'm like, listen, bring me the bike back the second you get it so I can at least button it up and go over the chassis and stuff like that to make sure everything was good, because I don't even know what the axles were torqued to. Like, that bike was not rider ready. The motor wasn't, you know, done. So at no point was I trusting the bike, but he said he wanted to ride it after it got tuned, and he wasn't gonna have me tune it right away. He just wanted to enjoy it. I'm like, that's fine. Just bring me the bike so I can make sure you don't die. I never saw the bike, and then I heard through the grapevine, not from the owner, that I guess the bike had been having problems. It was eating coolant, and then it was eating oil. The owner of the bike, I guess, brought it to a local mechanic, maybe to do a compression test. I don't know, I wasn't told. He ended up selling the bike right after that to some guy down the street or whatever the story was, and then I guess not long after that, the motor completely let go. So long story short, I don't think we should have even opened the motor on that bike. That bike should have just gotten supercharger gears and let me do my thing with the rest of the bike, and it would have been an animal. You probably won't be seeing that H2 probably ever again on this YouTube channel, unfortunately, because I don't know its fate. Hopefully that answers the question on what happened to the white H2 that was once appearing on this channel.
EJ540. Has the Tennessee meet been rescheduled, or did it fall through?
The Tennessee meet completely fell through. I would say 98% of the people that were all in completely canceled and blew it off, and then it got rained out to the point where I was going to have a reschedule, but a lot of people don't like to travel, and you know, it's very easy to say how you're going to travel, but when it comes time to actually doing it, people always tend to flake and bail. I have no problems traveling. I love traveling. I love seeing new places. I lost motivation to do it again. So, next question.
This is from Lou Bradley. I'm assuming he's talking about the Bitch Ninja, but he's asking, what are you using for the quick shifter, and what did you do to be able to enable or set up GP shift?
All right. Yeah, in terms of the Bitch Ninja and its shifting and all that stuff, it does have a woolage sensor on it. You do not need that sensor. I bought that before race tools existed for the ECU on the 16 ZX10s. The stock shifter mechanism, the actual shifter, the sensor is fine. So keep that, get race tools, or send me your ECU and activate race tools, however you want to do that. And then I use Bonamici rear sets, which there are a few rear sets out there that enable the ability to swap. So basically you have to change the sensor in Woolwich software so that it's a push-pull sensor, so it has to know which direction it is. So you have to reverse the sensor, and then you have to switch the linkage on the transmission so that it's now the opposite direction. And you can't do that with the OEM rear set, so you have to buy an aftermarket set. I use Bonamici ones. I like them. I've used them on my BMW. I use them on the ZX-10. I put them on customer bikes. I just like them. But there are other ones out there. But yeah, that's what I did. Rear sets and reverse the sensor in the ECU. Done. GP shift.
Next question is from Hemi Dave.
Hemi Dave.
So is my 2019 636 Ninja worth modding? And if so, what can I expect?
2019 636. Well, it sucks to take a great bike like that that's never going to be a truly really fast straight line bike and make it a straight line bike. So I would say do the basic stuff to it and enjoy it for what it is, a great handling bike that's got some balls for a 600, or ruin it as I ruin bikes, and I would say make it sort of like a sleeper, like, yeah, this is a 600, because that bike is potent enough to be able to beat up on old 1000s. There's been quite a few of those guys run well into the 9s with those bikes when they're set up, obviously with a jockey, and over 140 miles an hour. So for a 600, that's badass. And they're pretty basic bikes, just set up right for straight line stuff. So you could do that, or you could enjoy it for what it is. ECU tuning, full exhaust, filter, those are the three basic things, and then go from there. Next.
We have Zikri Hafiz. Is there going to be a difference in the map and tune depending on the purpose of the bike? So if it's a straight line bike or a road racing bike, and I guess this also goes back to another question, do you have any plans to build road racing bikes?
All right, to answer that question, for the most part, no. I have learned that, because I have my own throttle maps, typically when I flash an ECU, I'll include an OEM unrestricted throttle map, because some people do like it better. They don't like a responsive throttle. So my throttle maps are much more aggressive, so they require a little more, courtesy on the throttle. Anybody who likes to road race, because I have tune guys who love turning and are not straight line guys, they like my throttle map more than the OEM throttle map. And the straight line guys obviously prefer it because send it. And in terms of the fuel map, no, it's the same. It goes by the motor, not the style of racing.
We have Bacchus Thompson. Will you do R&D on the bitch with Kawasaki Racing Team parts? And he says specifically, you have race head gasket, cams, degreeing, port polish work.
So what I'm going to be doing is just putting an intake cam in it, the Cowie intake cam. And I'll review that. You'll know when I do that. That's not something I plan on hiding or anything like that. For the most part, I try and be as transparent as possible with what I do, despite people still assuming that I hide things. I really don't. I'll be doing the intake kit cam and then checking valve lash, maybe doing a valve adjustment if it needs it, and then putting it back together, and I'll probably race Sunny again and see if there's any gain. My guess is it might be 2-3 bikes over the course of an entire race. So I mean, if I can get that for the amount of money I'm going to have into it, which is essentially nothing, I'll be happy with that.
The next guy we have is Damon Dix. I noticed that you hit 6th and almost immediately tap out. He's asking, what speed are you running at the point, and why do you never max out 6th?
Obviously, I'm not going to carry out a gear if there's something in my way down the road. If there's a car coming up in the distance, a turn, something like that, I'm not going to stay in it. I'm not stupid. I'm not trying to die. No race is worth dying. Even if I have the road, I will never send a bike into the limiter in 6th gear. I know where my limiter is, I know what RPM I'm at. For the most part, you'll always hear me lift right before the limiter, because sitting on the limiter is so bad for motors. Any motor. I did recently bump the limiter on my bike so I can get more out of it in 6th gear. Right now, I would say the bike, it's geared for 190 to 192 GPS. I can make that longer, but again, like I said, our focus is max effort, half mile stuff.
I guess other questions that I've seen a lot in the comments is, they can see your customer and personal list up there.
Yep.
What are some of the customer builds coming in that you're excited for?
I would say probably Eric's red BMW round 2 is probably in the most recent future. He should be coming in sometime this week to get started on his bike, but he's doing another round of mods to the bike. We're going to be doing a front floating rotor. We got a titanium exhaust, going to be replacing his stainless exhaust. We're doing the no O-rings in the chain. I'm going to be polishing his transmission. Do a subframe on it. We're trying to get some weight out of the bike, make it a little more efficient. It already makes power, he runs great. So he unfortunately won't have carbon wheels. That's going to be the one last thing really to do to that bike, but I look forward to seeing how fast that goes.
And I guess I'll do a personal question for me.
All right.
There's a lot of new bikes coming out, or at least a lot of new revisions of bikes. You got the new 2020 BMW that everyone's going crazy about, especially the M. Obviously they're having some issues with the case and other stuff, and they're not coming out on time. But you got the R1M that was just in, I think, Panigale was just unveiled. So out of all the new bikes that are coming out, which one is more or less your favorite? Which one do you think's got the most potential? Which one do you want to work on the most, etc.?
I really want to build a V4 or a V4R because they make power, and let's face it, I would probably piss off 75%, maybe more, of the Ducati customer base by doing what I would do to a Ducati. But I would say more practically, probably the new BMW. Bren's working on a Flash to completely unrestricted ECU. They're pretty light bikes. They look like they're gonna make some good power. So I really would like to build a 2020 BMW. In terms of the new R1, I think it looks pretty badass. For those out there who don't know, the R1M makes no extra power over the standard R1. The R1S makes less power because it has inferior motor parts. Send me one of those. Send me a new BMW, please. I love doing this stuff, so it's fun, and I like seeing the customers at the end be pretty happy. And as of right now, Hyro in his 2019 ZX10 is just pretty much touring the lower Midwest and bullying a bunch of people. I'll get you guys some recent footage of that from him. He's going to send me his SD cards so I can get the HD footage and not the choppy, ugly footage. So stay tuned for that. But all right, guys, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this Q&A that we did here. This is going to be a weekly thing, so do me a favor. Comment below questions for next week. Just got any question? Post it, and I'll answer it next week. And I'm going to try to do this once a week, maybe every Wednesday. I think that would be a good midweek video of just Q&A of what's developed over the past week. Ask me questions. Try not to ask the same questions that have been answered in previous. Please watch the videos and go from there. But yeah, like I said, comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.